CHiPs is the recent comedy film from writer and director Dax Shepard, and it's based off a television series from 1977 that was extremely popular. And since this movie is a complete reboot, we have the same characters, John Baker and Ponch, but they're played by Michael Pena and Dax Shepard this time around. They're two people with different personalities that are partners with the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, and while they're going about their job, a certain crime starts to escalate even more so that they have to investigate in, and they get more involved as the movie goes along. But it's also a bonding film for them. It's an action comedy film, you see. And honestly, I don't hate Dax Shepard. I've liked him in some other roles before. I haven't really seen a movie that he's directed or written, I don't think, so I was interested to see how he was going to handle this film, especially because it's a remake of a previous franchise, the CHiPs TV series. And I'm just going to be very honest with you guys here. I didn't have any interest about CHiPs. I just had an interest in Dax Shepard. I didn't know anything about CHiPs. I went into this just knowing it's about two goofy police officers, basically. I've been catching up on a lot of films recently, great and bad, in order to think I have a great list for best and worst by the end of this year. I'm in, rush time. This is by far the worst film I've watched when it comes to my catching up. I've seen a lot of bad films, but for each one, there was at least something, or maybe a little bit more, that I can think of like, okay, that's a saving grace. That's not the worst thing ever. I can at least give it a pass for this. CHiPs has nothing. I was very surprised because it's also an action or comedy film. You would at least think that maybe either the comedy or the action would maybe distract you at least, but there's nothing. There's nothing, and maybe the action could have worked. Like, honestly, the action scenes that they planned out, it probably wouldn't have ended up so terrible if maybe they got a different director, and I hate to say this about Dax Shepard, because he could probably be a great director. I don't know, I didn't see Hit and Run, his other film. Maybe he's got a lot of talent there, but just the way the action was kind of filmed in this movie just felt kind of generic. A couple of the chase scenes are good ideas, but it's like it's just filmed in a way that's just not really grabbing. Maybe I'm just a little bit spoiled with Baby Driver earlier this year, which has like the best car scenes out of any film this year. But just the way they filmed this was just kind of okay to me, and the one saving grace to get you more invested in that could have been the characters. Because if you want to make a comparison, something that's kind of similar to CHiPs, 21 and 22 Jump Street. You have a movie that could have turned out to be just a complete, like, terrible film, like a terrible comedy, but because you had talented people like Phil Lord and Chris Miller taking their time with the project, you ended up with something quite special, like Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill's excellent chemistry. Their characters are really funny, and the action scenes are also really well handled, but what escalates that is the screenplay as far as the character writing and the dialogue. And the characters in this film really can't escalate anything. The characters in this film, honestly, some of the most irritating out of this entire year. I'm going to explain really briefly why Michael Pena and Dax Shepard just don't work together, and it's unfortunate because these two can do wonders, but it's just that these two, just from the way they wrote the script, just did not work. It's not really a problem with acting per se. I can see these two actually being friends in real life, it's just it all comes down to the screenplay. These characters are awfully written. Michael Pena is a hotshot FBI agent who was sent into undercover for the CHP, pretty much. He's partnered up with John Baker because he's with the FBI. John Baker doesn't know it for a while, at least. And because he's a hotshot character, they really do play it up. Like, he's very arrogant, he's cussing people out all the time. He insults Dax Shepard a lot in this film in like a very nasty, sarcastic way. Not like kind of like relatable, like delightful kind of sarcastic, just kind of like mean-spirited. And it was just like, you are like such a dick. And John Baker, the way they wrote him, incredibly naive to the point where you don't want to like him. You can write a naive character and you can kind of be like, oh, I feel sympathetic for him, or I feel bad for them. John Baker's just naive to the point of unlikability. There's literally a guy with his wife, played by Kristen Bell, and he's just acting normal about it, like, hey, what's going on here? Oh, a swim lesson, okay. It's like, that is the person that she's cheating on you with, and you're still living with her. Like, she's very open as far as, I am cheating on you, dude, and he's just like, oh, okay, well, I got this job to impress you, or do you love me now? And it was like, dude, come on. I get that not everything that goes down in a comedy is realistic or overly dramatic, and I get that you can play too absurd sometimes if it's done well, but this just was not done well. There's nothing clever about the way they write this character or anything really in this plot. You pair this naive guy with this FBI hotshot dick, and they do not mesh together. For the first, like, 30 minutes of this film, I was in agony. And I was kind of relieved when they were finally starting to bond just a little bit. I was just like, oh my god, finally, they like each other at least a little bit. They still act like idiots, though. John Baker is just kind of consistently naive, but after a while, Michael Pena turns to hotshot to just kind of a pathetic sex addict after a while. Like, whenever he sees a girl in yoga pants, he just, like, starts to lose control and starts to freak out, and he starts sexting some of his co-workers at the CHP, and I was like, why? Isn't a hotshot usually just the guy who just doesn't care about that kind of, like, petty, like, pathetic stuff? If he gets a girl, then he just gets a girl and he acts just like whatever towards it. But it was just like such a drastic change from just this hotshot to all of a sudden just acting like an awkward, pathetic guy. That's mainly my hugest issue out of any of my issues with this film. I can take some generic kind of looking action scenes. I can take a plot that isn't that new, something that's just a remake, not done as well, nothing that captures the spirit of the show. I assume it didn't, because not too many people saw or liked this film. But if you have characters that are at least watchable, if you have characters that are cleverly written, have clever dialogue, anything, then I can watch your film as a comedy, and they just did not have it. They are not funny at all. There's not one single joke that made me smile, chuckle, anything. Nothing. And even Vincent D'Onofrio, he's playing the main villain of this film, and usually Vincent D'Onofrio is pretty awesome. Like, of course, Daredevil and Kingpin and Full Metal Jacket, but also recently The Magnificent Seven. I saw that. I didn't do a review of it, but he's also really good in that film, because he has, like, this high-pitched voice, but he's, like, really violent, too. Like, that's a great actor who can play a great character, and in this film, they don't give him a character, they just give him a villain stereotype. Like, oh, he's with the CHP, but oh, he's the bad guy. Honestly, if you care about me spoiling that, then you should have seen the film by now. It's been out since March. Like, if you really cared about CHiPs and the spoilers in CHiPs, then you probably would have seen it already. But Vincent D'Onofrio, point being, was just bland and boring as the villain, which is something that shouldn't be possible, because he is excellent as the Kingpin in Daredevil, yet here he's just like, you could switch him out with any other bigger guy. And Kristen Bell, she's also an actress that I like, but in this movie, I was shocked that she has a better role in How to Be a Latin Lover than this movie. How to Be a Latin Lover has a better performance for her than this film, and that movie sucks too! She's pretty much married to John Baker, but she's cheating on him because he's not as cool as he once was, and then later on she gets kidnapped, of course, damsel in distress, and then she's like, oh, you saved me, John, let's hook up again, but it's only just so he can turn her down and call her a dick. Like, literally, that's the line. Like, you're kind of a dick. And there's so many other characters in this film that are unbelievable, unfunny, and I just did not want to watch them. There's no character where I was like, I want to see more of this guy. I want to see more of this guy. Even the, like, boss of Michael Pena, like, there could have been, like, good boss, like, angry boss, and he did nothing for me either. I was already astonished that CHiPs even got made, considering that no one was really asking for a revival, but I was also just holding out hope. Maybe Dax Shepard has something up his sleeve, maybe this can be another 21 Jump Street. And it just wasn't that. This is exactly what a lot of people feared 21 Jump Street was going to be. Bland action, a bland villain, terrible lead characters that should never have been partnered together. Horrible comedy. There is so much bad humor in this film. I was really angry at this film for the longest time. And I was serious when I mentioned that this is the worst film I've seen as far as the catch-ups. And I know I am gonna watch A Bad Mom's Christmas. Don't worry, that's next. that is next. So that film could potentially be the absolute worst as far as my catch-ups go. But Chips right here, as far as like my daily, like watch a movie, this is the most in pain I've felt. I'm gonna give Chips an F. I'm pretty certain this is gonna end up on my worst list because this film has nothing redeeming about it. There is not one single joke, not one single character, not one single scene that works. And I was hoping that maybe there could be some fun action moments, and it had the potential to be there. Poorly executed all the way through, though. I'm sorry, Dax Shepard, but this film does not work for me. But if you were one of the 17 people who saw Chips, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.